They called me a wicked woman. They said I had no heart. On the day my husband was buried, I did not cry. I did not roll on the ground like other widows. Instead, I danced. I clapped my hands, moved my waist, and sang loudly around his casket. People were shocked. Some spat on the ground and called me a disgrace. But none of them knew my story. None of them knew the truth about the man they were burying. That dance was not madness, it was freedom. But let me start from the beginning. The first time I met Emeka, it was like a dream. I was just a village girl, trying to survive. My father had died early, and my mother was sickly, so I had to sell bread at the roadside to feed us. Life was hard. Many nights I slept hungry, but I never complained. Then one afternoon, Emeka walked into my life. He was handsome, tall, and carried himself with confidence. He came to buy bread, but instead of rushing away, he stood there, smiling at me. His words were sweet like honey. He asked me about my life, my family, and even cracked jokes that made me laugh until tears rolled down my cheeks. That laughter was the first I had in weeks. From that day, he kept coming. Sometimes he would buy too much bread just so he could spend more time talking to me. Sometimes he would wait until I closed my stall so he could walk me home. My mother noticed and asked me, "My daughter, who is this young man?" When I told her his name, she smiled weakly and said, "May he bring you peace and happiness." Peace and happiness. I held on to those words like gold. When Emeka proposed to me under the mango tree behind our house, I thought my prayers were answered. I was shaking with joy when I said yes. On our wedding day, the whole village danced. They said we were the perfect couple. I wore my white gown with pride, and my heart was full of hope. I believed we would grow old together in peace. But love has a way of changing when you least expect it. At first, it was small things. He would get angry when food was late. He would shout when I forgot to iron his shirt properly. I told myself it was normal, that all marriages had ups and downs. But then one day, he slapped me. My world froze. Tears ran down my cheeks, but he knelt immediately, begged me, and promised it would never happen again. He bought me gifts and kissed me softly, and my foolish heart forgave him. But that was only the beginning. One slap turned into many. One apology turned into endless excuses. The man who once made me laugh became the same man who made me cry almost every night. In public, he was charming, respected, and loved. People admired him. But in the house, behind closed doors, I was his prisoner. I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of being called a failed wife. Afraid of living with nothing. But inside me, something was dying slowly. Love was living. Every time his hand landed on my face, love disappeared a little more. Every time he shouted at me, my heart hardened. Until one day, I realized there was no love left. Only pain. Only bitterness. Only hatred. So when people saw me dancing around his casket, they thought I had gone mad. But I wasn't mad. I was free. I was telling my story without words. The crowd could not believe what they were seeing. A widow dancing around her husband's casket. It was something nobody had ever witnessed in our village. The old women shook their heads in disgust. Some men whispered, "This woman is not normal." Others said, "Maybe she killed him and is now rejoicing." But nobody dared to stop me. My feet moved with anger, my hands clapped to the rhythm of freedom, and my heart beat like a drum of release. Yet, as I danced, my eyes caught something. A figure standing at the edge of the crowd, watching me closely. My body froze for a moment, but I forced myself to keep moving. It was his sister, Ngozi. Her eyes were red with tears, but her face was filled with rage. She looked at me like she wanted to drag me into the casket with her brother. You see, Emeka's family never knew the kind of man he was behind closed doors. To them, he was the perfect son, the successful brother, the generous provider. He paid their school fees, built houses for them, and carried their burdens like a hero. So in their eyes, I was the ungrateful wife who refused to appreciate a good man. They never believed me whenever I hinted at the truth. They always told me, "Endure, that is how marriage is." But I endured in silence until silence almost killed me. As the choir sang at the burial, my mind traveled back to the early days of our marriage. How Emeka would surprise me with flowers, how he would cook noodles for me when I was sick, how he would call me my queen every morning. My heart remembered, but it was not sweet memories anymore. They were bitter, because those same lips that once kissed me also insulted me. Those same hands that once held me in love also beat me like an enemy. The worst night of my life came when I lost my pregnancy. It was his hands that caused it. He had accused me of talking too much with the neighbor. Jealousy consumed him. He beat me until I fell and bled. That night, I cried until my soul broke, holding my stomach as life slipped away from me. From that moment, I swore never to forgive him. And when he apologized again, I smiled on the outside but inside, my heart turned into stone. That was the day love finally left my marriage. Completely. Now here I was, standing before his casket. The man who promised me forever but gave me wounds instead. The man who should have protected me but became my greatest danger. People expected tears, but all I had was rage. Rage that poured out in dance. But then, something happened. As the pastor lifted his hands to pray, a loud shout broke from the crowd. Everyone turned. A strange woman ran forward, holding a baby in her arms, screaming, "This man cannot be buried in peace. He was a wicked man. He ruined my life too." The whole place scattered. The drums stopped. The villagers gasped. Emeka's family rushed to block her, but the woman kept crying, her voice shaking with pain. My legs trembled as I looked at her. Who was she? What was she saying? And whose baby was she holding? The whole burial ground was on fire with confusion. Flushed-faced, the woman who ran in was shaking, holding her baby tight to her chest. People tried to pull her back, but she screamed louder. "Let me talk. Let me talk before you bury this man." Her voice cracked with pain. Mothers pulled their children closer. Old men stood from their chairs. Even the pastor could not continue his prayer. I stood still, my heart pounding. Who was this woman? Why did she come now? And why did her eyes look at me like we shared the same story of pain? The woman pointed at Emeka's casket. "You all see him as a hero, but do you know what he did to me? This baby is his. He left me in shame, in tears, in rejection. He destroyed my life and walked away as if nothing happened. Now you are here singing songs for him. No. He does not deserve peace." Gasps filled the air. Some women placed their hands on their heads. The drums that had gone silent were now replaced with whispers that spread like wildfire. Emeka's family rushed to silence her. His sister, Ngozi, shouted, "Liar. You want to spoil my brother's name. Who sent you here?" But the woman pushed them away and kept crying. I stared at the baby. The child was small, barely 1 year old. And then my eyes widened. The baby had the same dimple as Emeka, the same piercing eyes. My whole body went cold. The truth was written clearly on that child's face. Memories of my marriage came rushing back. How Emeka would disappear for days and tell me he was busy with business. How he would pick strange calls and hide in the bathroom to answer them. How sometimes he would come home smelling of a woman's perfume. I had doubted him, but each time I asked, he turned it into a fight and accused me of mistrust. I thought it was just my imagination. But now, seeing that baby, I knew the truth. My husband was not only cruel, he was also unfaithful. Tears filled my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness, they were tears of rage. Rage that I had wasted my years loving and serving a man who betrayed me behind my back. Rage that I had lost my child because of him while he gave another woman a baby in secret. The crowd turned wild. Some believed the woman, others defended Emeka's name. The burial ground was no longer a place of mourning, it was a market of arguments. The woman fell to her knees, begging. "This baby is his blood. Do not bury him like a saint. Let the truth be known." Emeka's mother collapsed in tears, shouting that her son could never do such a thing. His brothers carried her away. His sister Ngozi turned her anger toward me, pointing her finger at my face. "You brought this disgrace to my family. You are behind this woman's drama, she screamed. But I only looked at her and smiled sadly. I didn't bring the disgrace. Her brother brought it on himself. The truth had finally come out, right in front of the whole world. But as I stood there, my eyes locked with the woman's. She looked at me with pity, almost as if she wanted to say more. Then, she whispered something so low that only I could hear. My body shook from head to toe. The moment she whispered those words to me, my knees nearly gave way. Flushed face, my whole body froze. It was as if the ground beneath my feet was shaking, and the air around me had become too heavy to breathe. I stared at her, my lips trembling, but no sound came out. Her eyes told me she wasn't lying. The truth was right there, piercing me like a blade. She had whispered, *, you are not the only wife. He married me in secret. My head spun. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. What did she just say? Another wife. Not just a lover, not just a woman he deceived, but a wife. My husband had another wife in secret. The noise around us grew louder. The villagers were restless. Some shouted, some tried to push her away, others begged for calm. But I was no longer hearing their voices. My mind was locked in a dark room filled with memories. Every unanswered question, every strange disappearance, every night he came home late, all of it suddenly made sense. So, all this while, I was not his only wife. I was not the only woman carrying his name. I was just one of his games. My legs trembled as I stepped closer to the woman. What did you say? I whispered, my voice shaking. She looked me in the eye and repeated, he married me. He gave me this child. And when I refused to keep quiet, he abandoned me. At that moment, something inside me snapped. It was as if all the years of silent pain were now rising up like a storm. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt locked. I wanted to run, but my feet refused to move. The people around us watched closely, waiting to hear what I would say. But before I could respond, Emeka's family rushed at the woman. His brother tried to snatch the baby from her hands. His sister slapped her across the face, calling her a liar. The crowd shouted in anger, some for her, some against her. The pastor begged for order, but nobody listened. The burial ground had turned into a battlefield. Then, the woman did something that silenced everyone. She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her bag and raised it high. Here is the proof, she shouted. His name, his signature, our marriage certificate. The crowd gasped. Old women wailed. Men held their heads in shock. And me? I just stood still, my eyes burning. My husband, the man I once danced for in love, was now the man I danced against in hate, and now, in his death, his secrets were chasing me like shadows. As the paper passed from hand to hand, people murmured. Some said it was fake, others swore it looked real. Emeka's mother fainted again, crying, my son, what have you done to us? The baby in the woman's arms cried loudly, as if confirming the shame of his father. But I could not cry. My tears were long gone. Instead, I felt something else, fear. Fear of what would come next. Because if what she said was true, then everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. And then, like thunder striking, another voice rose from the back of the crowd. Another woman stepped forward. This time, she was older, with fire in her eyes. She pointed at the casket and shouted, he married me too. The ground shook with noise. People screamed. Some women ran. Men tried to hold the new woman back, but she was stronger than them. She carried her own piece of paper, waving it in the air. My chest tightened. My eyes widened. My whole world was spinning out of control. How many secrets did my husband hide from me? How many wives were about to step out of the shadows? The moment the second woman shouted, he married me too. The entire burial ground exploded like a marketplace on fire. Flushed face, the noise was deafening. Some people ran forward to see her face, others pulled back in shock. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break through my chest. One secret wife was already too much to handle, now another. This new woman was older, maybe in her 40s. She wore a faded wrapper tied tightly around her waist, and her eyes burned with a pain that could not be hidden. She raised her hand high, and in it was another document. "This is our marriage certificate. Signed by him, stamped by the court. I am his wife too," she cried. The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths, others pointed at the casket as if the dead man could rise and defend himself. Emeka's family rushed forward in anger. His sister, Ngozi, screamed, "You people are lying. You are jealous of our family's success. How dare you bring this shame here?" She tried to grab the paper, but the woman held it tight and refused to let go. The pastor shouted for peace, but no one listened. Old women shook their heads and whispered, "This is abomination." Men looked at each other in disbelief. Children were dragged away from the scene. And me? I just stood there, numb. My body was shaking, but no tears came. I was too broken for tears. The man I once loved, the man I once trusted, had turned my entire life into a cruel joke. First his fist, now his secrets. How could one person destroy so many lives? The first woman, still holding her baby, turned toward the second woman. For a moment, they looked at each other in silence, and then she said, "So, you too?" The second woman nodded with bitterness. "Yes. He left me when I fell sick. He abandoned me like trash." The crowd went wild again. The burial had turned into a theater of disgrace. People were no longer crying for Emeka, they were arguing, cursing, and spitting on the ground. The drums that were meant to carry him home now sounded like drums of war. I closed my eyes, and all I could hear were the words of my late mother, "My daughter, may this man bring you peace and happiness." But there was no peace. There was no happiness. My mother's prayer had turned into a curse. As I opened my eyes, I noticed something strange. The second woman was not only holding a paper, she was also holding a photograph. She raised it up for everyone to see. My eyes locked on it, and my blood ran cold. It was a wedding picture. Emeka stood beside her, smiling with pride. He wore the same suit he wore on our own wedding day. My knees weakened. My stomach turned. The whole village screamed. It was undeniable. My husband had lived a double life, a triple life, maybe even more. As the picture passed from hand to hand, his coffin shook slightly, as if even the dead man could not rest. Some shouted it was his spirit protesting, others said it was the wind. But in my heart, I knew his secrets would not allow him peace, even in death. Then, before the crowd could settle, another sound pierced the air. A voice from the back shouted, "We are not done. There are more truths to be told." The crowd turned again. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. Who was it this time? The third voice was sharper than a knife. It sliced through the crowd and froze every movement. Flushed face heads turned, eyes widened, and the once noisy burial ground became as silent as a graveyard at midnight. A man was walking forward. Not a woman this time, but a tall, dark-skinned man with tired eyes and trembling hands. He looked broken, but there was fire burning inside him. People whispered, "Who is this again?" as he pushed through the mourners. When he reached the front, he raised his hand. In it was a small Bible, old and torn, but carefully wrapped with a rubber band. His voice shook as he spoke. "I am not here with documents. I am here with the truth." Emeka was not only a liar to women. He was a liar to God. The crowd gasped. The man pulled off the rubber band and opened the Bible. Inside it were folded papers, letters. He held them high. "These are his letters to me, written in his own handwriting. He promised me money. He promised me contracts. He swore by this same God that he would help me. Instead, he destroyed my business, took my money, and left me in shame." The villagers roared again. Old men shook their heads, young men clenched their fists. Some shouted, "Abomination," while others muttered, "So Emeka was a fraud to men too."